Really, thank you everyone for coming. Your presence really makes a big difference, and all of us want to see a better Bromsgrove. And thank you, Stephen, for coming as well. Your support is hugely grateful. 5 years ago, there were no Liberal Democrat councillors in Bromsgrove. Today, there are 5. We are now a big chip in the blue wall. Bromsgrove District Council is now under no overall control. I feel proud to be with my fellow councillors Rob, Sam, Josh and Siobhan, holding the Conservatives to account. The recent local elections, we had just over 20% of vote share. Across the West Midlands, we were the 6th largest Liberal Democrat party by vote share, and we did that without any outside help. But today is not the past, it's about our future. But we build on our past. For me, I grew up in Belfast and saw directly the dangers of extremism. My best friend at school, his father, a taxi driver, was murdered by terrorists. My uncle was one of the highest ranking part-time members in the Ulster Defence Regiment, living in border country. I left Belfast to come to Birmingham University to study medicine. I loved the diversity of the place. There weren't any Balties in Belfast in the 1980s. Belfast seemed a grim and hopeless place then. Although I've lived in Hagley, in Bromsgrove for over 20 years, seeing the day the Good Friday Agreement passed in 1998 was a triumph of hope over fear. A high water mark in politics and diplomacy. I've spent my entire consultant career working for the NHS in Birmingham, having previously worked elsewhere, including in South Africa, the year Nelson Mandela was first elected president. Another triumph of hope over fear. Worth remembering today, of all days, the 10th anniversary of the great man's death. We are at that point again, this time in Bromsgrove. People are fed up with the lying and chaos of the current government. I have never seen Conservative voters so angry as meeting them on the doorstep, saying never again as they voted Lib Dem for the first time in their lives. Why now? A general election is over a year away. It is vital that we are out now fighting for every vote. Bromsgrove is a safe Conservative seat, or is it? With Sazza Javid, former Health Secretary, standing down, there has never been a better chance for a Liberal Democrat. Why not Labour? Labour have forgotten how to oppose. This election will be about the economy and the cost of living. It will not be about wokeism or even the boats. It will be about the economy. No one did more than the Lib Dems to highlight the dangers of Brexit, from everything from the Good Friday Agreement to the economy. The lies it was based on. Yet Labour is still stuck on a Labour will fix Brexit. I don't even know what that means. Do you? But we have left the European Union. But there's nothing to stop us. For example, following countries like Norway, which is part of the European Economic Area and not the EU. As Lib Dems, we saw in North Shropshire how we can win. Not by banging on about Brexit, but by showing that we cared and fight against the harms caused by Brexit. Labour have forgotten how to fight. Last month, I was in Belfast for a medical conference. Belfast is booming. Even Rishi Sunak says so. Look, that Northern Ireland will have the, quote, world's most exciting economic zone due to its access to the EU single market. Yeah. Yet even Belfast has its problems. At dinner, I asked why a colleague of mine, a fellow neurologist, but an Orthodox Jew, was not there. Due to Brexit, the organisers have not been able to get any kosher food imported. It would have cost £5,000 to get through the red tape just to get kosher food imported for one individual for 3 days. Brexit is anti-Semitic. Who knew? You could not make this up. Lib Dems highlighted how we needed the windfall tax on energy companies months before Labour. Locally, I highlighted the madness of the Three Counties Medical School in Worcester not having a single funded place for UK medical students months before Labour. Despite locally, we spend £70 million a year on agency staff. Crazy. Yet yesterday, before it was published, we had West Streeting congratulating the Conservatives for copying Labour's plan on the NHS workforce. The plan does not mention Worcestershire. I've looked. Okay. And Sunak thinks you do not need a dentist, just a therapist for your teeth. Great plan with literally no teeth. As Lib Dems, we have fought for our high street, our art centre, Artrix, our health and social care service, our dentists, our green belt, the climate crisis, and against rip-off utilities and against the sewage in our rivers. As Lib Dems, we will keep fighting, but we can only do it with your help. I am under no illusion how big a challenge to take on Bromsgrove is. I have no idea when the next general election will be, certainly over a year away. Clearly, if Sajid wants to clear off and call a by-election, that's fine by me. As Lib Dems, we just love a by-election. As Lib Dems, we do not have the money of either unions or Russian-linked donors to support us. It's people like you that can help us win. I took on Sajid Javid in 2019 and got one of the best Lib Dem results in Worcestershire against the national trend. So I have no hesitation of taking on whatever unknown Conservative they parachute in next year. Bring it on! As Barack Obama once said, we choose hope over fear. We see the future not as something out of our control, but as something we can shape for the better through concerted and collective effort. For me, hope is a place called Bromsgrove. I want you to join me today as we launch the campaign for Bromsgrove to have its first Liberal Democrat MP. Yes, we can.
That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for asking me to come and witness it. I can't really add to what you said because nobody could respond or listen to what David has just said and doubt the amount of fire in his belly. He said Labour doesn't oppose, Labour doesn't fight. David Nicholl will fight for Bromsgrove, fight for the whole constituency as he already does as a councillor. It's a great personal pleasure when David called me a few weeks ago and said that he was planning to launch his campaign to be the next Member of Parliament for Bromsgrove this morning, and would I like to come along and join him on that occasion. And thank you, David, for asking me to do it, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here to wish you luck. Don't think you actually need luck, because what you've got around you is a group of people who are clearly committed to give you the support you need. What I'd like to do, if I may, just for a few minutes, is to dwell on why we're here and how we deliver the victory that you clearly are personally, totally committed to. And first thing I want to say in that sense is that in the conversations I've had before we sat down to this formal bit, is to mark the fact that all of us in this room have come here from different points in the political spectrum, and our stories are different. And that in itself tells a story. David was a lifelong Labour supporter until the referendum that brought us together into a different formulation. I was, as I think most people here know, a lifelong Conservative. I was a member of the Conservative Party for 49 years. I joined it in 1969 when Ted Heath was leading Britain into what was then called the European Economic Community. I left the party 50 years later when Theresa May was leading us out of what had become the European Union. As Ronald Reagan, once a Democrat, once said, "I didn't leave my party left me." That's true of my journey, David felt the same about Labour, which is why we came together actually briefly as joint candidates in Change UK. We won't dwell on that. Leaving Labour to join the Liberal Democrats, I left the Conservatives to join the Liberal Democrats because I believe very strongly that the Liberal Democrats offer the hope that David identified in the story that he told of his own personal story coming from Belfast. I remember the Good Friday Agreement. It was actually a moment of hope. The thing I want to add to what David said about it was that the Good Friday Agreement was a brilliant example of two political leaders from different political persuasions in the UK working together to deliver something that was of fundamental importance both to Northern Ireland and to the wider UK. I remember the risks that John Major took when I was a member of his cabinet, risks with the Tory right of those days to get the Good Friday Agreement going. I remember the dialogue that took place between John and Tony Blair as the incoming Prime Minister to deliver the Good Friday Agreement. And I've noticed that the two of them are now friends, partly because they share a commitment to ensure that the Good Friday Agreement that they jointly created isn't prejudiced by the Brexit that both of them opposed. I'm fond of repeating the words of John Major about Brexit. John is not a man who uses bad language in public. The closest I've ever heard him come to it is when he said that Brexit was an historic mistake. He normally qualifies everything. That is very clear language. An historic mistake. And I'm working with John and increasing with Tony Blair when I chaired the European movement in order to oppose Brexit. So as Liberal Democrats, we can demonstrate that we oppose Brexit. We also have to own what happens next around Brexit. I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. We also have to recognise the broken political system, that because of the coincidence of Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn gave the voters in 2019 a completely false choice, which is what ultimately led to the confirmation of Brexit. And it's why when I'm asked why I'm now a Liberal Democrat, I always say there are two fundamental reasons. First is Brexit. I've already referred to the fact I joined the Tories in '69 for the reason I've given. But the second is that I acknowledge, as somebody who, as a Conservative minister, always argued in favour of first past the post. I wonder why I did that when I was a member of the Tory party. I acknowledge that if we want grown-up politics in Britain, we will not get it until we change the electoral system and therefore the political system. It's a genius political system if you think about it for a second. We've got basically 5 political parties in England, leaving out Wales and Scotland for a second. We've got 2 parties in the Labour Party, we've got 2 parties in the Tory Party, and we've got the Liberal Democrats. And just think about it for a second. We've got a political system that makes 3 out of 5 a minority. You couldn't make it up. Which is why I'm in favour. There are 2 key reasons why I'm now a Liberal Democrat. Number 1, we have to address Brexit. And secondly, we have to address the political system that gave us Brexit. There would have been no Brexit if it had not been for first past the post. Those are the 2 fundamental reasons why I'm here. I want to go on from that, just to say a few words, if I may, about the election that's coming. Because everything I've said, I believe very passionately everything that I've said. Brexit is an historic mistake. It was brought about by a political system that has broken. But we're not going to change that political system between now and the next general election. So we have to win the right. We have to win the right in the next general election to change the political system, to build the kind of society based on hope. I'm going to get distracted. It could take some time. To build the political system that delivers on the hope that David described. And I always used to say when I was a Conservative parliamentary candidate, I said when I was standing for the Liberal Democrats in Buckingham in the last general election, you don't win general elections in the 3 weeks before polling day. You win them in the period between now and polling day, demonstrating that David is the man who will fight the corner of Bromsgrove, both locally and nationally. We need to create a dynamic within the community that David is an effective advocate for the interests of Bromsgrove. And that really does depend. I was sitting down earlier on, before you were trying to teach balloons, you were trying to teach me to use minivan, which was, we didn't entirely succeed in the technology. But building the data, getting a campaign moving, knowing where our support is, explaining in particular in this constituency to former Conservatives why the things that they used to vote Conservative for should now lead them to vote for David Nicholl and the Liberal Democrats. That's a house-by-house, message-by-message undertaking. And we've 12 months plus a bit probably to make that case. So that's hugely important, and it's no good saying, oh, we'll see you next year. That's a campaign that needs to start now. And I just want to offer you three messages that I think are fundamental to winning that argument. First of all, David focused on the economy. In the end, it was Bill Clinton, wasn't it, who said it's the economy, stupid. That's one of our key arguments, to remind people of the chaos of Liz Truss, to remind people of the fundamental irresponsibility of Boris Johnson. But actually, I'm not going to bore you with statistics, I'm just going to remind you of one. You may probably, this isn't yet fully understood. Before 2008, the economy of the European Union and the economy of the United States were roughly the same size. Over a period of 15 years, which is no time at all in economic history, a gap of more than 20% has opened up between the economies of Europe and the economy of the United States. There is no way we can deliver the public services we want or the living standards we want if we don't address the fact that our economy has been falling behind our competitors in the global economy, but also falling behind our competitors elsewhere in Europe. So addressing economic failure is mission one for the next government, and Liberal Democrats need to be on side for addressing that failure. Secondly, David, as a lifelong NHS doctor, understands the importance of public services. I've spent the last 30 years primarily in the public space interested in health. It is a scandal that in this country the differential between people living in rich areas and people living in poor areas in the same borough is getting wider, not narrower. That's an issue Liberal Democrats should be engaging in every day, giving people access to high-quality public services, addressing the environmental causes of some of the ill health that people suffer, recognizing that health and the quality of the environments in which we live, they're both linked, they're intimately linked together, and they're a key responsibility, not just of the Department of Health or the Department of the Environment, they're a core responsibility of the Prime Minister as the leader of a government. And that's why I doubt the commitment of Keir Starmer to deliver the standards we want to see, when the moment it becomes controversial, he deserts the ground of the environmental agenda that was set out by Ed Miliband. I'm no fan of Ed Miliband, but Labour has to convince that it will deliver both public services and environmental change if it's going to be part of a successful government that we as Liberal Democrats would want any kind of association with. So, sort out the economy, address public services, and then my final point is that as Liberal Democrats, surely to goodness our core values are around understanding the importance of a society that enables people to build their own lives, to be responsible for their own lives, to live in responsible communities, to engage with their neighbours. Margaret Thatcher didn't mean what she said, but it's important to contradict it every day of our lives. There is such a thing as society. We as Liberal Democrats want to build effective, responsible communities to which public services are accountable and which can participate in successful economic life. That's what makes me a Liberal Democrat. My final thought to you: don't let anybody ever tell you that a small group of people committed to a great cause can't make a difference. Because the truth of history is that that's the only thing that ever has. Thank you for asking me to be with you this morning.